It was here at Snapper Point where the 27-year-old woman got into trouble. She was rock fishing with her partner at around 7 last night when she slipped and was swept into the water. The woman, who wasn't wearing a life jacket, managed to swim to a rock ledge, and her partner threw her a life ring until more help arrived.
Since they've had the angel rings, as they're known, placed down in that location, that has definitely saved a few people's lives.
The Westpac rescue helicopter eventually winched her to safety, flying her to John Hunter Hospital.
She was suffering from mild hypothermia. I'm not sure exactly how long she'd been in the water for, but possibly up to about an hour. She'd also had suffered lacerations due to trying to climb back up onto the rocks to get herself out of trouble.
This notorious stretch of coastline has claimed 23 lives in the past decade. 19 of those have been directly related to rock fishing. So undoubtedly a very lucky escape for this young woman. It's prompted a reminder from authorities to always wear a life jacket.
Setting their sights on the starting line. V8 drivers James Courtney and Scott McLaughlin getting a feel for Newcastle's racetrack just days after talk of it being changed was shut down.
Unfortunately, the timing of this, it's too late. It's set, and the track we have is the track we have for 2017 and beyond.
Moves to redirect the circuit away from the city's historic East End were quashed by supercars last week, and those behind the wheel say they're looking forward to racing through the precinct.
The track looks spectacular with the amount of undulation, running back up through the middle part of town and then back down to the parklands. It's going to be fantastic.
Circuit engineers were also taken on a tour of the track in preparation for works to commence next month. Supercars is confident there'll be less noise about the route once construction begins.
Without the detail, there's been a lot of scaremongering. Now that the detail is coming out, you'll see that there's a lot less concerns.
Organisers say the region will reap big benefits from the November event, including a $57 million economic boost and an infrastructure investment.
There's an extraordinary amount of legacy items that will be left in the city. The widening of footpaths, stormwater drainage, resurfacing and grading of roads, extra car parks.
Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
They're stories detailing people's experiences with palliative care. Deeply personal and moving, the Cancer Council hopes this book will resonate with the state government. Hunter politicians at least were out in force at the book's launch, pledging their support for the I Care for Palliative Care campaign.
We'd like our Hunter MPs to hear those stories, to take them to the Health Minister and to actually take up this campaign and take action so that we can get the resources that we need.
One of those stories is from Dungog resident Jennifer Creel. A 2-week wait on specialist palliative care meant a lack of timely pain management for her husband Christopher during his battle with cancer in 2013.
I strongly believe that if we'd had access to a palliative care team that could have managed his pain relief, then we could have kept him at home.
She's sharing her experience to highlight the urgent need for more specialists and resources. The Cancer Council says its vital services are boosted, not only in the Hunter, but statewide.
What we need is 10 more specialist palliative care doctors. We need 129 more nurses and appropriate palliative care for Aboriginal people. And that would bring us just up in line with other states in Australia.
Renee Feder, NBN News.
To look at the barriers that they're encountering and also to workshop what opportunities are out there, perhaps changing their goals.
Which allows parents and families to sign up to Play Baby for children under 12 months, to encourage our families to bring their children to playgroup. Is the connection that you have with your child and how you interact with them from a very early age, even from when they're very first born, is so important for their health and well-being and their development in future years.
Round one in Abu Dhabi was always going to be tough in a rented aircraft.
We were happy with how we adapted to the plane. It was not as fast as we would like, but we still got a point, so let's move on from there.
Hall heads to Oklahoma on Thursday to begin working on his new plane ahead of round two in San Diego. The series returns to Southern California for the first time since 2009, where Matt finished fifth in his debut season.
The track is a pretty fast track, so it'll be some high-speed manoeuvring in there. We're yet to see how that suits our new plane, but we think it's going to be okay for us.
If the aircraft lives up to expectations, the 45-year-old says he can challenge for the world title, especially after overcoming a back injury and health problems in 2016.
First of all, that's awesome to be able to go out and enjoy being healthy again and spending some time with the family and down here exercising. And we're actually finding that I am, I'm in a much better state, both physically and mentally.
Ayub is one of the most respected officials in the game, and the coach says he's happy to accept his opinion.
Tony Ayub's got 30 years experience, and Tony's made a judgment call, and as the head coach we support our staff, and we'll go through the process with the NRL now and see what the outcome is.
Despite the criticism, Brown believes the Knights have one of the best systems for dealing with head injuries.
We've got Dr Gardner and Dr Chris Levi who have their own concussion clinic. That's got nothing to do with our club, that all our players go and see if they fail tests. Look, we feel we're putting the right things in play, and if we have got it wrong, we'll pay the penalty like everyone else would.
Elliott was on light duties at training, but is expected to play the Panthers.
We've got no concerns with Brendan at this stage. He's still got another one or two boxes he has to tick before he's allowed to play, but that decision won't be only made by our docs, it'll be made by the independent people as well.
Nathan Ross should play despite an ankle injury, while Sione Matautia is also being monitored after being concussed against the Bunnies.
He should train on Thursday and should be okay. He's not 100% cleared yet, but all things are pointing towards that he would play at this stage.
English import Joe Wardle and veteran Anthony Tupou will be considered for selection if other players fail fitness tests, while Paulie today completed his first full session since a car accident in January. Mitch Barnett has switched his focus to Penrith after a fiery encounter with George Burgess.
So I guess a bit of frustration, but we'll leave it at that. He's, he's a great player, and stick to footy, and it'll be all good.
Reporter Kate Haberfield was first at the scene at Tyers Hill today and joins us live now. Kate, what's the latest there?
Paul, as you can see, the usually busy Maitland Road here at Tyers Hill remains blocked as heavily armed police continue to negotiate with the Wallsend man. It's believed he arrived in the region earlier this morning before taking a car which police alleged was involved in a pursuit at Hamilton South. That led police here to the townhouse. When they confronted the man, he climbed out onto the roof where he has been all afternoon. Police believe he is armed with a knife. Tactical police will continue to negotiate with the man until the situation is resolved. In the meantime, residents of the complex have been told they cannot return home.
Thank you, Kate Haberfield reporting there.
Police on edge, forced to watch and wait, guns drawn as the tense standoff stretched into the early morning. Eventually, 17 hours after it began, it was all over.
It's been resolved peacefully, which is fantastic.
It wasn't until almost 5 a.m. when the 27-year-old re-entered the home, the police were finally able to swoop.
He's been assessed by ambulance, paramedics, before being taken to Newcastle Police Station.
The road to the rooftop drama came to a head in Newcastle yesterday morning when police allege father of one, Ricky Kincella, stole a car and was then chased by police at Hamilton South. That led officers to the Tyers Hill complex where Kincella climbed onto the roof. Residents were ordered out as the heavy artillery moved in.
All we heard was there was a guy up on the roof and then they just told us to leave.
Today, the complex remained out of bounds as forensic investigators went to work. Police allege Kincella is behind a crime spree which began in Sydney and spanned 150 kilometres. The 27-year-old is accused of stabbing 3 men at a gym on Monday night before heading north. It's then alleged he robbed service stations at Shortland and Sandgate, escaping with cash. Late this afternoon, Kincella was charged with 20 offences, including 5 counts of armed robbery and 3 of cause grievous bodily harm. He'll face court in Newcastle tomorrow. Amanda Bennett, NBN News.
Nine months after he was charged, Nock Ha left Newcastle Local Court this afternoon after pleading guilty to supplying an indictable quantity of cannabis. Appearing via video link from prison, his co-accused, Bayoti Nguyen, admitted to cultivating a commercial quantity of a prohibited plant. Both will be sentenced next week. The charges stem from a police raid at a property on Irving Street at Wallsend last June. There, officers uncovered 129 cannabis plants in what they described at the time as a purpose-built drug house. All rooms were allegedly being used to grow marijuana with electricity from off the grid. A third person charged following the raids, Kong Nguyen, also fronted court today. His matter was adjourned. He told the court he still hadn't received legal representation despite being charged some 9 months ago. In response, Magistrate Cheetham said he was reluctant to enter a plea, telling the accused it was in his best interests to receive legal advice before the matter returns to court on April 12. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Back to the grind for Scott McDonald.
I'm back, yeah.
But not everyone's happy. Shadow Minister for the Hunter, Kate Washington, says it's a missed opportunity for the region to have its own minister.
Gladys dumped Scott. Gladys appointed Catherine. Catherine then dumped on Scott, and then Gladys reappointed Scott. It's a really weird story, and it's a sign of a government that's just not functioning.
I don't think it comes down to job titles. I think it comes down to how well I work with people and how I can get those messages back to Macquarie. Gladys Berejiklian is on speed dial with me, so if I've got a problem, I text or phone her, and she's at the other end of the phone.
However, Mr McDonald admits even he's not sure if he's here to stay.
They're captain's calls, as they say, and as long as it's effective, as long as it's getting the job done, I've got every expectation we'll go up to the next general election in March 2019.
Regardless, he's got his sights set on making the Glendale interchange happen.
I was a bit hesitant in the early years. I thought the project hadn't been costed well enough. I now think they've done that work. They're working with transport. So I'm certainly going to be ringing the bell for that one in the budget. And I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful that there could be planning money in there.
Emma Murphy, NBN News.
You are always with people who understand what goes on within the military, whether it's World War II, Vietnam or Afghanistan. The military is the military, Army, Navy or Air Force, and there's that like-mindedness which makes people very comfortable when they're with their peers. The one thing that we're adding to the calendar this year is the freedom of entry by HMAS Newcastle on the Monday. This is probably the last time that Newcastle will have an extended stay, that's the ship, in Newcastle itself. So we're looking forward to that.
No game's easy in the A-League, and if we don't go there with the right mentality, then we can come back and our season could be over. The motivation's enough that we can still make the finals, and you know, if I can be effective and play a part in that, then I'm doing my job. But, you know, in saying that, it's just about, you know, a little less, you know, conversation and I guess a little more action.
It's known as the Miracle of Istanbul. Liverpool was down 3-0. Until an amazing second half saw the game go to penalties. Polish keeper Jerzy Dudek was the hero that night. On April 15, he'll join his former teammates in Newcastle.
We've got the left back, John Onorisa, possibly one of Liverpool's best left backs, Luis Garcia, the Spanish international, and the German guy, Didi Hamann, who is an absolute legend.
It was the legacy of Hunter-bred legend Craig Johnston that encouraged the players to visit.
They tend to go to the bigger cities in Australia, and to get them into Newcastle, I kind of told them about Craig Johnson and the history and the culture of what Liverpool means to this region, all through Craig Johnson. That seemed to tickle their fancy.
The limited seating at Queen's Wharf Hotel ensures fans can interact with their heroes.
It'll be more like a private function, a bit of finger food, things like that, just where people get to associate with the players and meet them one-on-one.
They're all level-headed, and I think that's the great culture that Liverpool brings, and that's why these events do so well. Because the fans get to meet them, they have a drink with them, they have a laugh, they have a yarn, get some things signed.
For more information, head to 5times.co.uk. Currently 8th in the women's qualifying series, Anderson's campaign to earn a spot on the World Tour is off to a solid start.
Treat it as a marathon, not a sprint, so that's kind of how I'm taking it, and I don't know, hopefully this year I can qualify finally.
This weekend, she'll take a break from the QS to lead the Merriweather girls at the second qualifying event of the National Surf Tag Series.
We had a training session yesterday. It was pretty funny because some of the girls don't compete as much as I do, so they were like really nervous, and I was like, it's just a fun day, like it's going to be all good.
North Narrabeen will be favourites in the men's and women's divisions, but the local boys are confident with a team featuring Jackson Baker, Travis Lynch and surf tag specialist Jesse Adam.
Whatever you tell him to go out and get, he'll do it, so hopefully he can still do that because he's been out of the water with an injury. But yeah, I think all the boys are fired up. I saw a few in the water and they're really excited, so hopefully Merriweather can walk away with the win for both the men and the women this weekend.
"27-year-old Ricky Kinchilla is facing a raft of charges stemming from an alleged crime spree across Newcastle and Sydney and ending with a rooftop standoff at Tighes Hill. Kinchilla didn't appear before Newcastle local court today, his solicitor telling the magistrate he would remain by consent at Newcastle Police Station for various reasons. He was taken into custody in the early hours of yesterday morning and was wanted by police over an alleged rampage spanning 150 kilometres beginning on Sydney's North Shore on Monday night. There, he's accused of storming a gym at Brookvale and stabbing 3 people, Nicholas Worsley, David Burns and Daniel Fernandez, all of whom survived. Police then allege Kinchilla headed to Newcastle in a stolen car and robbed 2 service stations. On Tuesday, he was located on the roof of a property at Tighes Hill, where he stayed for 17 hours before being arrested. He's facing 20 charges, including armed robbery, reckless driving and aggravated break and enter. Kinchilla didn't apply for bail today and a mental health assessment was requested. He'll remain behind bars until his next court appearance in April.
After a decade and more than $100 million, the end is in sight for the remediation of the former BHP Steelworks land.
We're down to our last 52 hectares. We've issued a contract today for $20 million.
Hunter-based company Darracon has begun working on the final stage at Mayfield, bringing to a close one of the biggest remediation projects in the city's history. A new chapter lies ahead for the site once work wraps up at the end of September.
We're working with the EPA both at a state and federal level to make sure we follow their processes in remediating the land and turning it back into something that can be utilised for employment going forward.
As for exactly what that will be, Hunter Development Corporation CEO Michael Castle says there are several options.
It's been something that we've been looking at for some time. It's all around that industrial use and everything from business park through to manufacturing if that's required.
Renee Feder, NBN News. Deadly by name and by nature, but until recently, marine biologists had little evidence of just how lethal the sawfish really is. Researchers at the University of Newcastle have helped paint a clearer picture of its unusual eating habits.
There's very little research that's been done in terms of observing its feeding behaviour in real life.
It's got a number of what they call electrosensors in the saw rostra, so it can actually pick up fish. And it will pick up a fish's nearby, it will swish its rostra backwards and forwards, and the unsuspecting fish will get impaled.
It was widely believed sawfish used their unique rostrum or snout to stir up prey on the sea floor, but by applying engineering principles, researchers have found that isn't so, confirming the fish is far more stealthy than previously thought. The rostra has a very similar shape to that of an aircraft wing, allowing the predator to slice through the water virtually undetected.
Any object moving through water will disturb it, but it disturbs it in a minimal way.
Working alongside researchers at Murdoch University and Sharks and Rays Australia, the engineering team used 3D modelling to simulate the fish's movements underwater.
To work out what sort of force, so what sort of impact the water was going to have on the rostra, and therefore how stealthy, how hydrodynamic it was.
There's still a lot scientists don't know about the sawfish, but every piece of information helps when it comes to dealing with an endangered species. Amanda Bennett, NBN News.
Whether he's in his recording studio or on stage in front of a national audience. Guide dog Stanford is never far from Matt McLaren's side. For almost a decade, he's been a loyal and loving companion to the Newcastle musician who was born without sight.
I've been really lucky because Stanford's such an adaptable, intuitive, smart dog that he's been able to adapt to my crazy lifestyle of, ridiculous hours and late nights and early starts and, going new places all the time.
The pair sharing plenty of good times along the way.
He's been in some interesting situations over the years at different gigs and in places I've ended up and places I probably shouldn't have ended up.
But age has finally caught up with the Golden Labrador. He'll retire in just a few months' time. A party is being planned for this Sunday in the Newcastle suburb of Carrington, and all are welcome.
Started off as a celebration of his retirement and how amazing he's been over the years and how hard he's worked and what he's achieved with me. And it sort of turned into a bit of a fundraiser for guide dogs. So we're going to have like a raffle and an auction, and there's going to be some hot dogs, obviously.
While Matt will get a new guide dog, he admits it will be different.
It is a bit sad. It's going to be hard not working with him anymore. And if when I get a new dog, he's going to have very big paw prints to fill.
As for Stanford, he'll hang around as Matt's pet and enjoy some well-earned rest. Renee Feder, NBN News.
A new take on the iconic red and blue. Jamie Buhrer is showing off his Iron Patriot jersey and matching headgear to be worn against Penrith tomorrow, then auctioned for the Mark Hughes Foundation.
Do you feel like a bit of a superhero running around in it?
Nah, definitely not.
The Knights will need all the powers at their disposal. The Panthers are starting to find their feet, but Buhrer says so is Newcastle.
We can't help but feed off the underdog's house because we've always got one. So you got to embrace it in a sense. Every week we've seen improvement from a number of the younger players. Just seeing that they're capable of competing physically and they've got the skill required to compete in the NRL.
Brock Lamb is one of those younger players.
I was a little bit rusty in round one, but I'm starting to find my feet and starting to feel confident again, which is good.
It's easy to forget he's just 20 years old and has only 6 NRL games under his belt. Lamb's been crucial to Newcastle's expansive attack shown so far this campaign, a style Penrith does better than most.
They obviously shifted Peachy and Moylan a fair bit, and we're just going to have to work on our defence there and get our line speed on them. But in saying that, if we go in there thinking about what they're doing and what they're going to do now, what they're going to do then, we're not going to worry about ourselves and we're going to get ourselves wrong.
Samuel Jordan, NBN News.
He planned to relax and do some light training over summer following a tough season in the US, but Iaconi ended up winning the Australian series before enjoying even more success.
I went over to New Zealand in January for the Asian Australasian Championships and ended up winning that. And then last 2 weekends ago we had Nationals up on the Gold Coast, which I placed third at.
He's now preparing for his 6th season in the US and his 4th as a professional.
I've been living over there since I was 15. It's always a hard time of year leaving them, but you got to do what you got to do.
Iaconi will fly back to his Orlando base on Monday.
Get back over there, get straight into training. We've got a big year of contests. I think over the 22 weekends that I'm there, I'm going to be travelling about 15 to 16 of them. So yeah, I'm really excited to get back over there.
He stood on the podium plenty of times in the US in 2016 and ended up 2nd in the World Series. But it's not just the Americans Iaconi will have to outclass to become a world champion.
Australians are definitely dominating the wakeboard scene right now. We've got probably 4 Australians over there that are top 5 in the world.
Mates mourning one of the hardest of losses.
It's very shocking for us. Like, we can't describe anything. Like, what's the pain we've been going through.
Mohsen Arwan was swept from the rocks at Nobby's Beach late Sunday night. He was taking a photo with a friend when a large wave dragged them into a rip. After an extensive search, his body was found 3 days later near Newcastle Beach.
I'm really thankful to God that at least we have found his body and we can hand it over to their parents, at least because we buried, like, it's a religious obligation.
Mohsen, who was studying a business degree at the University of Newcastle, had only been in Newcastle for 6 months, but had already made many friends at the Gardens Cricket Club. Today, they remembered their adventurous mate, gone way too soon.
Full of life, excellent person. I've never seen such a jolly guy. Like, he used to interact with everyone.
The 23-year-old's devastated cousin expressing his family's grief.
Our family are without an important, vibrant member.
The University of Newcastle today issued a statement saying losing a member of our community in such tragic circumstances affects us all. Support and counselling services have been offered to affected students and staff, and our thoughts are with Mohsen's family and friends at this very difficult time. Emma Murphy, NBN News.
A place of law to a place of learning. Newcastle's old courthouse is set to become Nihon University's first offshore campus and the CBD's second major student hub.
You'll have about 100 people in the old courthouse. I think that's good. That puts life back into that part of the city.
The heritage building was sold in December last year for $6.6 million after 7 weeks on the market. The sale couldn't have come sooner, with the inner city complex left in disrepair for over a year.
We could have had a risk of a building that wasn't being utilised and perhaps falling into disrepair.
But it seems the new owners are keen to see the building reimagined into a 200-student campus with a 100-bed dorm and a library for Australian and international learners. The president of Nihon University says Newcastle was chosen because its people and environment make it the ideal location for study and research. The Berejiklian government has commended the sale as a great example of its asset recycling policy, which says the government should only hold on to public property when it's required, and otherwise buildings should be sold to free up capital for the state.
We're on a pathway, I think, to getting better value for taxpayers, better value for all of our assets, and look, I think everybody's a win.
Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
gathering around to meet the newest members at Raymond Terrace Public School. 8 cockatiels settling into their sanctuary. It's part of a new program taking flight.
We've got 3 special needs classes. We've got other students who have been affected by trauma in the past, and this is an opportunity for them to be able to have some time with the birds, whether they just watch them, whether they talk with them, non-judgmental.
Principal John Picton says the aviary will be a beneficial addition to the school.
Just be able to have that time out, relate to something in nature, something that's calming.
As for the students, well, it's already proving a hit.
The birds are so beautiful.
I love them when they fly around.
A community effort helped get the aviary up and running. Charles Webster from the Chuck Duck charity says it's one of his most rewarding projects to date. He hopes this one at Raymond Terrace is just the beginning.
Every school that wants them. If there's 400 schools, we'll do 400 aviaries. We don't care. Men's Shed have been fabulous. Others have been fabulous, and we'll do it all.
Renee Feder, NBN News.
Cleary along Moylan, working towards Wateni Zelezniak. He's got the ball. There's one of the hyphens. Going right through the middle of the ruck. Wateni Zelezniak there. He just... Moylan along for Foray. Here we go again. Oh, Ross committed. He just had so much space. He did it. It's Peter Matadia. Got the kick in. Oh, Wateni Zelezniak's lost it. Ross is there. They both claim it. Cleary along Moylan, working towards Wateni Zelezniak. He's got the ball. There's one of the hyphens flying for the corner. The Panthers.
23 games, Newcastle's A-League season comes down to this.
Yeah, 100% it goes without saying. We just haven't taken our opportunities, and we need to do now. It's make or break, so we're the winner or we're out.
The Phoenix will be without 7 regulars who were on international duty, but Mark Jones says that won't make the challenge any easier. Instead, the key to winning lies with the Jets and taking their chances in front of goal. To do that, he's likely to change his front third.
Everyone's had an opportunity, and we haven't. The 9 and 10 position hasn't produced enough goals for us. So it's about who looks the sharpest. It doesn't matter who. Someone needs to put the ball in the back of the net.
A decision on who that will be made closer to kick-off on Sunday, but Morten Nordstrand is tipped to come back into the starting lineup. Jason Hoffman returns from suspension to a back four coming off a tough outing against City.
The moment they scored the second, I thought from that point on that we chased the game too much and we didn't really look like winning it.
But Jones says that scoreline doesn't further motivate his side.
One would think that they're motivated enough. It's an opportunity to win a game that gives us a sniff of being in the six for the first time in 7 years. One would think that they don't need any motivation.
An idyllic location, but Newcastle cricket is hoping this is as close as it gets to the wet on the weekend. Today at number 1 Sports Ground, beneath grey skies, groundsmen worked overtime to prepare the surface. Both sides confident of seeing action.
Just need to be mentally prepared to play, I guess, and see what the weather dishes are.
I just went and looked at the wicket and it seems like, we should get on.
It's shaping up as similar weather conditions to last year's decider, but that's where the comparison ends. For the first time in 5 years, it won't be won by Merewether. And while Hamwick's won last fortnight's T20 crown against Belmont, years of falling short to Merewether in this format means they're determined to finally take the title.
This is the one we haven't got. This is the one we throw up for, you play for. You know we've got a job to do. And unfortunately, over the last couple of seasons, we haven't done that job.
That job won't be easy. At today's DeCourcy luncheon, minor premiers Belmont was named Team of the Year.
We'll only get better next year, I think. You know, we've got some guys that are only new into their careers and with some experience as well that I know are keen to hang around.
And skipper Mark Littlewood, Player of the Year.
Got nothing but respect for the guy, and the job he's done with the team this year just shows what sort of captain he is as a player and amongst them like a leader.
Soon he'll step into a new role, the region's junior academy coach, but that doesn't mean his playing days are over.
No, not just yet, not just yet. Yeah, my wife might disagree, but no, I've probably still got another couple of years in me yet, we'll see.
It went into administration in 2015. Fast forward almost 2 years, and the Burwood Colliery Bowling Club is still in limbo. With liquidators unable to find a suitable operator of the site, the lease is in the process of being handed over to the state government. But now an Aboriginal land claim has been lodged.
My understanding is that a land claim will put a hold on exactly what Crown Land can do as far as future moving or developing of this particular site.
Local community group Burwood Commons is concerned the site could one day be developed. It wants to keep the site as a recreational space for the public and says its unique location makes that an ideal option.
It is adjacent to the Glenrock State Conservation Area, which is very popular with mountain bikers. We're just round the corner from the Fernley track.
The Charlestown Labor MP agrees the site should be used by the community. She's written to the Lands Minister to request a meeting.
I want to make sure that he knows how important this particular site is.
We will work with anybody who is interested as long as they are keen to keep this as an open recreational space that the public can access.
A Department of Land spokesperson says nothing can happen with the site until the land claim is considered. Renee Feder, NBN News.
The fence has already come down, but that's only the beginning for this section of Newcastle's old rail corridor, now known as Market Street Lawn.
We think it'll be a real winner.
A development application lodged with Council includes paved sitting areas, plenty of green lawn and a water feature.
It'll have lots of trees, over 100 trees will be planted through this area, and it'll become one of those spaces that we can use to activate the city.
And in a nod to its rail history, the iconic signal box will be restored and repurposed. Depending just how quickly the plan is approved by Council, we could see this area transformed in time for the supercars in November. $510 million is being spent on the city's new light rail and former rail corridor redevelopment. Rezoning of the corridor to allow development further west is still underway, but it's full steam ahead for Newcastle and Civic stations.
We engaged just before Christmas around some detailed designs on what the two stations could look like. We're very close to coming out with the findings of that engagement, so that report should be out in coming weeks, and then we'll progress to DAs a little bit later in the year on those ones.
Amanda Bennett, NBN News.
We first come together in 2014 when Abbott was first elected, and back then there was quite a groundswell of opposition to the policies that will look to be put in place. Nothing's changed.
Buoyed by 3 heartening performances, but it quickly became clear the Knights were in for a long outing.
We're a team that we need to turn up every week and compete hard, or we'll get what we get tonight.
Nathan Brown says the record loss isn't a backward step, but that won't make it any easier for the players. Subjected to an endless onslaught from the on-song Panthers.
It was obviously very fast out there, it was quick, they were getting a roll on, and it just felt like we were continually on the back foot.
Penrith aren't the premiership favourites for no reason. They got us today when they were far more committed in the middle part of the field, and players are very, very skillful, and they showed today that when they get it right, how good a players they are.
There were few positives to come from the game, but Mitch Barnett is likely to be cleared of a serious shoulder injury, and Englishman Joe Wardle made his NRL debut.
He's played 2 reserve grade games, he's off knee surgery, hasn't trained much, but I thought he was certainly one of our better players.
But nothing seemed to work for the Knights, and luck seemed to desert them. Further hurting themselves with errors against a side who don't need an invitation.
People got to remember 7 years ago Ivan Cleary started at this club doing the exact same job we're on 1 year into at the minute as a staff and a group of players.